We are live. It says so right there on my screen, Kenny. We are live. Welcome to the share around section. Let me get some share around music going. Where's my share around music? Oh, I got to scroll down. Let's find one we haven't used yet. Let's do rock. I think our guests will like rock.
Yeah, now you're breaking up a little.
Okay. Hey. All right, enough of that. What do you think, Kenny? You ready? You play music? You want to give it a minute? What's going on now? I can't hear you.
Oh, I'm ready.
You ready? Okay.
Yeah.
Here we go. Let's let the music play. And here we are with our guest. Kenny, do you notice anything different about me today, buddy?
Yeah, I like your ties.
You like my ties? How about you,
Yeah.
Ron? You like those? Look pretty good, don't they?
Yeah. Congratulations.
Thank you. That was a lot of fun. I joke, man. That was a lot of fun. My backdrop will be enhanced shortly. So, hey, guys, here we are. The Tuesday Night Live, the ABTA Tuesday Night Live. The topic of the night is, so let's think about this. What do we say, Kenny? You're 3 hours into your 4-track of the day. You know, you're tired, you're wet, you're cold, you're hungry. Your dog is strung out, and you're wondering what the hell's going on. And then all at once it dawns on you what?
You're falling apart.
You're falling apart. You are falling apart. It is you. So the discussion of the hour or two is the handler mental fatigue. And what a better cast of characters than to talk about mental fatigue and then Ron Slifer and Matt Berger. Ron, welcome to the show, buddy.
Hey, well, thanks for having me. I don't know if I should take that as a compliment, the way we're talking about mental abilities or whatever.
That's open to interpretation. At least I didn't say, hey, better than a couple of mental meatheads like no, I'm just kidding. Now, look, in all seriousness, guys, we did last week, we talked about mental fatigue in a dog, and it was a great conversation. And obviously, that prompted Ron. You started the jokes on Facebook when we talked about mental fatigue for the dogs. About are we going to do it about mental fatigue for handlers? Well, absolutely, yes, we are. And it is a fun conversation. It is fun to joke about because but and we'll have a lot of fun talking about it tonight. But there really is a serious element to it. There is credible. Let me get to the comment. I got to. We've got to. We're going to get down to some stuff that really matters and can be applicable to the field. It may create an aha moment or make you reflect on something over your tracking career that said, you know what, I think I was just mentally fried there. And then you can be aware of that as you apply it. They always say knowledge is power, and that is true to a point. But I say knowledge is power when it's applied. I learned something today. I get to go home. Nope. Now you get to stay and apply what you learned. People ever do that at work. Oh, I learned something today. I get to go home. Nope. You get to stay and apply your knowledge. And the application of knowledge is where the power's at.
That's right.
If you keep it, go ahead, bud.
What better guest to have than Ron? I mean, not saying that he's not mentally prepared, but Ron, as well as I do with the amount of experience that you have and I have, we've been there. We've been through this. We've made our mistakes. We're going to make them more. But in your area, and you shared it time and time again, when the rut hits, y'all are wide open. And that's when it really happens. So you are the perfect guest for this topic.
Yeah. It definitely is a busy time during the rut. And yeah, it's be a very interesting subject when we get into this really good. But before we start, Kenny, I've got something here. It's got your name on it. Okay. Kenny here. I'm going to Kenny. It's got the name Kenny on it. You see this?
Oh, isn't that the cutest?
I actually like that one.
Kenny, that one's Kenny. All right.
Got a Brandy. This one's got Brandy's name on
it. That's another good looking one. So you got the right colors because those are the good colors for the Florida heat.
Yeah, you're right. The black dog.
Yeah.
But we got a Mullins coming here. Hold on.
Oh, let's see Mullins.
Oh boy.
Oh yeah.
I thought it was going to be a goat.
Any draft, we'll ship them down to you. Yes, or
Hey, you know what? We got an event coming in Michigan where we're going to run a couple of lines that require some distractions. Ryan, why don't you come on up to Michigan and bring a couple of those goats with you?
2 litters on the ground.
I know. Yeah.
People don't realize, we're getting off the subject here real quick, but people
That's
just
okay.
how much work that is with.
Oh yeah.
It's a once we start weaning them, it's feeding and cleaning poop and everything else, and 18 puppies, that's a lot of poop.
Oh yeah.
I can imagine.
Especially bloodhounds.
So Ron, I see that I haven't seen it yet. I mean, I saw it, but I haven't watched it yet. You posted Rudy's. Did you disclose that yet or announce that?
Reveal, yeah. She had 4 males and 1 female.
4 males and 1 female, huh?
Yep. So,
okay. How's Jewel's runt doing? Is she back with Jewel, or did you keep her with? She's
going to work with me. She's putting on weight now. We'll be seeing the vet here next week. She's at my side right now, so if you hear a baby crying, it's probably her. But I got her belly full, so she shouldn't be crying. She should be taking that. But those runts, they really get to you. A lot of people like that runt, but when you're bottle feeding that little baby and you're looking at its eyes, it's like, boy, I'm getting really attached really quick.
Yeah. Oh, I would be doomed.
Yeah,
I would be doomed.
It's the last thing I need is another bloodhound. I have 9 adults now. It's like I keep telling myself that I don't need another one, but man, it's going to be tough.
Oh yeah, I'm just a flat out sucker. I love bloodhounds anyway because they're, but I'm just a flat out sucker for dogs. I break everybody's dogs. You know, my daughter and son-in-law, they have a German Shepherd. She's the first dog we trained for tracking, and she is very, well, she's very shepherd-like. Joel did a great job of training her, very disciplined. When I go to the house, she completely breaks. You know, because Grandpa's there, and I, you know, I don't care if she jumps on me. I give her a hug, and you know, and that. When I went to Joe's house this weekend to test, you know, his little just beautiful little sweetie, this little cur dog, Sage. You know, she jump up. Oh, wait, no love until all 4 feet are on the ground. I said, well, you got the wrong guy for that. And I started giving. I'm a sucker for that kind of thing. So yeah,
You're really a sucker for a cur dog. You just didn't know it until then.
Oh, she was a sweetie. I've never been around one before. I just don't have any exposure to them. I mean, I love my bloodhounds. They're meatheads, but I love them to death. But you know, I'm not a breed snob, but I do love my bloodhounds.
That's part of that mental side we're talking about tonight. Oh wait, we're talking about mental preparedness. Sorry.
Freaking criminy steaks. All right, man. So here we are. Let's dive into it because I can see this isn't. Ethan says, "Man, it's not allowed. I'm not allowed around Ethan's dogs now because, yeah."
We've already so much time now. I won't tell my joke, so we'll.
Oh, we'll have to fit that in somewhere, Ron. You know, we'll get it in, but
not the sign language.
Let's kick it off, man. The mental side, you know. I have plenty of meathead moments that could fill the show. And throughout each of your tracking careers, I'm sure you could too. But Kenny, man, lead us into it. You know, the mental side, the mental preparedness, just the toll that tracking can take on the handler. You know, we know it can take a physical toll, but let's talk about the mental toll and you know the emotional toll, which plays into the mental toll of you know, the ups and downs, the long streaks of no finds, and you start thinking that your dog is freaking broken, and then all of that, man. So Kenny, let's kick it to you, buddy.
Yeah, so I got a few notes here. You know, the first thing I wanted to start out with is, you know, what is mental preparedness? Mental preparedness is the handler's ability to stay focused, make clear decisions, and remain calm under pressure. That's mental preparedness. You know, and this applies to all handlers, regardless of experience. You know, like we talked about, you know, I was kind of joking around about earlier is, you know, the experience that someone like Ron has, and you know, the years that I've been doing it, you know, we still make those mistakes, and we'll get into why we make those mistakes. But I will say this, you know, mental preparedness is focus, confidence, and decision-making readiness. And I know that's a mouthful, but being mentally prepared is being proactive, not reactive. And that's where we need to be. We need to be proactive on these tracks. When we start becoming reactive, that's where the mistakes are made. And if you study any of the other tracking worlds like SAR, you know, police work, any other the military dogs, they will tell you that 60% of unsuccessful tracks are a result of the handler.
That's a very, very high number.
I believe
it is.
Or a high percentage.
It is. And you can look that up. I mean, it's, you know, the statistics are there. And it's no different in tracking.
Yeah.
Kind of an example I had jotted down is, a calm handler settles a confused dog and allows a restart. A panicked handler causes the dog to blow past the turn and onto a false trail. And you really see this a lot whenever you're trying to make the hunter happy. And when you're trying to make that hunter happy, that you can't recover that deer, but you're trying to make that hunter happy. That's you, being reactive to the situation rather than proactive. The proactive approach would have been to discuss with the handler ahead of time what to expect, what the signs of your dog are when they tell you that this deer is not recoverable, that it's going to live. That would have been the proactive approach. The reactive approach is, hey, I want to satisfy this hunter because they're not really believing it. And now I'm going to push my dog. And now we're pushing it on to off game. So you weren't mentally prepared for the situation. You didn't prepare the hunter for the situation. So, Ron, can you share a time when your mindset helped and or hurt a track?
So I think I've got bits and pieces of what you said there. Can you try to say it again, Kenny?
Can you share a time when your mental mindset helped a track and when it hurt a track?
Oh yeah. So hurting a track, I definitely in the early years, I just was so driven.
Yeah, we're losing you.
Can you still hear me, guys?
Yeah, go ahead, Ron. That was on your end, Kenny. I can hear you.
Okay. In the early years when I started, I've been over a decade of doing this, 12, 13 years of tracking. And I know just in the early years, I wanted to prove myself so much and had a lot of drive just in myself, not only the dog, but I did as well, and it's like I was pushing myself so hard and I didn't quite understand the concept of a deer was being shot and bleeding and why am I not finding it? I was thinking I was going to find a dead deer every time I went out there because I was listening to the hunters, the old story. You don't believe the hunter actually, but I pushed so hard and that fatigue, that lack of sleep, and the physical demandingness of it, I think what's the word? Cortisol, the stress builds up in your body, that cortisol. And the more I got to doing that, I was just obsessed with it. I was losing sleep, and it's a downward spiral. That sleep deprivation, they use that for a form of torture, on people and stuff. So,
oh yeah,
physically, mentally, it breaks you down. But and then you throw in the winter months here in the Midwest and Illinois, where I'm at. You got short daylight hours combined with that, and you're putting up with the stress of the hunters. You're feeding off that stress of them, and then you're seeing the animals, some of the suffering they go through. You know that, and it all just compounds on it, builds on you, and towards the year, I used to kind of get in a depression, just and that seasonal blue. But you throw in, like I said, I'm eating junk food on the road. We all do that, eating the junk food. Thing it's available to us through the middle of the night. So it just you're bound to make mistakes if you're not fully rested, don't have a positive attitude. And I also have a lot of faith in God. I rely upon God. I talk to God. I pray. And I'm not saying that's the thing that everybody needs to do, but I find comfort right there in that. Every track that I do, I just say a prayer. I started doing that a few years back. And so a lot of the hunters will say, well, that's good because I've been praying all night to find that deer. But it's like, no, I'm praying for wisdom here and get us, there's going to be an answer. It may not be the answer, but, we're going to we do this. But yeah, there's definitely many times I can think back of just pushing myself too hard. And that was a downfall to many tracks, But then on the same token, I had the foresight in my dog and seeing when they was fatigued, and that was time for us to sit down and take a break in the middle of the track to help the dog out, and they need that rest sometimes. We a lot of times we think a dog is a machine. I think some of us do, and they're not. They're muscle, blood, tissue, just like we are. They're not that robotic machine that can keep going and going and going. And we do push them a lot. I do. And I know, Kenny, I think your last podcast, you said you did, I don't know, 200 tracks one season or something like that.
Oh yeah.
And I think we've come maybe 160, 170. And it's craziness when you do that many tracks, and I can remember doing stupid stuff, driving down the road and falling asleep in the middle of the night. And that again, I'll roll the windows down, and then 5 minutes later, I'm starting to doze off again, and it's like, I gotta stop this crap, but I want to get home, and then there's times where I've just about fell asleep in the driveway coming home. I was that close to home and that tired.
Yeah.
And
Oh yeah. Yeah. You turn the radio up, you turn the air conditioner down, you start, rocking back and forth, and it doesn't work.
And it still worked, man. It just don't, and I think it's because deer season also is just limited to so many, it's a set time, it's 3.5 months, 4 months, whatever, in some states. So we know we just got that block of time, and we train all summer long, all the off season. It's like the Super Bowl game to us, actually. I look at it as that way. Deer season's like all throughout the season, because that's what we strive for. When it's here, we want it, and we go for it. And there's a lot of pressure, and like I said, this is a great topic. It's an eye-opening thing, for sure. It's not really talked about.
Yeah. Yeah, and you kind of hit on the next question already. I was going to ask you, what do you do mentally before you start a track? And prayer is a great thing to mentally prepare.
Yeah,
just taking that brief moment to to calm down and get right before you go on the track.
Yeah, and a sense of humor. I talked to Matt earlier today on the phone, and I can laugh at myself. I'm a kind of a prankster and play a lot of pranks on people, but I can laugh at myself when I mess up. But having a sense of humor out there and just making it fun, we have a lot of fun with the hunters and prank them and do stuff and lighten the mood somewhat, and you got to know your clients. Some people just can't handle that, don't want that. But I mean, my partner Gary last year said, let's just go out and have fun. Let's have fun at this. Don't stress out so much, make it fun.
Yep.
You can just compound itself with all the stress, the worry that you could do, and there's no need for it. Just make it fun.
Yep.
Yeah, that's right. You said it a second ago, Ron. There's so much natural stress that goes along with it that you don't need to add to that by taking yourself too seriously. That's not to say that it's a clown show when we go on tracks. No, but have fun with it, man. That's why we do it. We all nobody's getting rich off from this. We do it because we like it. We we love emotional abuse. We love physical abuse. We love apparently, because that's all part of it. We love the highs of the highs, and then we don't love the lows, but that's part of the game too. And it's just like that golf shot, that one golf shot that keeps you coming back, that one recovery that you never thought you would find, or that guy just losing his mind because you found his deer that was ready to give up. Those are the things that just, man, that's what it's about,
Oh yeah, for sure.
The old saying, it's like I've always said that on lead tracking, it's just like that lead is a telegraph wire, So if you're fatigued out and stressed out or whatever, that just goes right through to your dog. You guys have talked about that before. You know what I'm talking about.
Oh yeah.
So there again, you're hurting your dog. I was guilty of it in early years. I just wanted to run and prove myself as much as I could, and I still find myself doing that every once in a while. It's like, I need to back it down a little bit,
Yep.
And I'm not bragging about the bloodhounds. We're having our fun. Everybody's got their breed and stuff, but I'm blessed with the hounds that I've got, and a lot of hounds, different dogs can be this way, but I would load the dogs up after a track, and they're asleep in no time in the back of the truck.
Mm-hmm.
And next track, we could run like that all day, but some dogs don't key down, they're in the truck and they're sitting and looking and everything else. So that was a blessing for me with my dogs, that they were able to do that and wind down between tracks. That was a big help, Unfortunately, I never teach the dog to drive the Jeep or the.
Yeah.
But that's the other good thing, if you guys follow me, you know that I have Gary that helps me pretty
Yep.
much all throughout the season, and that's a sweet deal because I can trust Gary handling the dog. He knows what he's doing, and then when that busy time comes, I can answer the phone and take notes and stuff while he's driving, and cover ground and stuff like that. Because it's hard to do that. Drive, load your dog up, do these tracks, and then take all these calls and remember where you got to go. You've got to take notes because
Oh
you'll
yeah.
Johns, and then which John am I going to, or which John,
Yep.
it gets confusing,
So speaking of Johns, I have a Gary. His name's John, and talking about mental fatigue and just getting tired. What works out great is John's like my bloodhound. When he hits the truck, he falls asleep. So when it comes time that I'm starting to fall asleep, he can hop in that driver's seat and he's well rested.
Yeah, all freshened up.
I'm not gonna lie, I'm kind of the same way with Gary, man. I can doze off. He does the driving too a lot, but it's the wall, I got to do it. So it's just a partner, when you're out on the road by yourself and you're starting to doze off, that's not good. You could hurt yourself or hurt somebody else, and it's just not worth that.
No. So talking about fatigue, mental fatigue, you start making poor decisions, you miss signs, and like we just talked about, it comes from long nights, stress, terrain, emotional pressure, maybe not even tracker related. Maybe you had a bad day at work, maybe you didn't get enough sleep the night before. Maybe you and your woman is going through some issues, or whatever can lead to mental fatigue. And it honestly, it accounts for the majority of failed recoveries.
Yeah. Totally.
So what are some signs of fatigue? Second guessing every move, and we've all been there. Getting impatient with the dog, getting impatient with the hunter, hyper fixating on sign like blood, forgetting information in the middle of the track.
Yeah.
All that signs of fatigue, and you'll misread your dog, and you won't reset when you need to reset, or you'll call your dog off the track to reset them and screw them up. I mean, just mistake after mistake.
It can be a whole can of worms. Anything's possible at that point when you're like that,
yeah. I'm sorry, Ron, didn't mean to cut you off, buddy.
And there's a word that I always like to mention. Of course, you guys know I got shot in the leg with that crossbow and stuff, and complacency is a thing that I think needs to be talked about too. In my situation, it was just we'd done it a bunch of times. Had that loaded crossbow or whatever, and there was kind of a reason for it. I saw at the time, and everything was going great until that point where I got in front of him and he got behind me. And it's that complacency. It's simple. Never. I always like to talk about it in some way, just to let people, if they haven't heard about it, don't allow it. And that was a good thing out of the bad thing, because I know there's trackers that's got pictures of that on their phone, and they'll show that to the hunter. This is why you're not going to carry your gun loaded or your crossbow loaded or whatever. But that, I think complacency is a factor too. You drop your guard when you're fatigued and tired and you're not thinking right.
100% correct.
Yep.
And that's
one.
But yeah, the dog, like I said, the dog can definitely feel when you're. They always say dogs can smell fear. I mean they can probably sense. I know they can sense when you're fatigued and stressed and probably all out of your pores of your skin. They know.
Yep.
Well, I mean, it's a chemical change. It's a chemical reaction in your body, right? Fear produces pheromone, and I am 100% totally convinced that's what it is. I mean, that's what they're tracking on deer, chemicals. So when you have that stress, that fear, that whatever, there's something chemically going on in your body, and that's what so can they smell it? Can they Jacobson's organ it? I don't know what it is.
Absolutely.
But it's 100%. I'm convinced, is how they know that. That's how they know when the seizure is coming. That's how they know. Somebody was talking. Was it last week on the show? Was it? I was talking to somebody. Their dog knew when their kid was going to get sick before they even started to show a fever.
Yeah, and it's all from the pheromones. Same thing with
health status. Yes.
Yeah, the health status, and same thing like when they're tracking, convicts.
Yeah.
I mean, when they're running, they're scared. Same thing. But what we don't talk about, or what I have personally, all the years I've been involved in tracking, what you don't really hear people talk about is how to train for this. And there are training tactics, and this is stuff that I've been working on over the years. And I kind of wanted to put it together and share it here. And I go a little more in depth. I'm going to go a little more in depth at some of the seminars in the next couple of years. One of the best training tactics that you can use for, well, I'll just give 3 training tips on fatigue. Go out there and track after a long day of work. When you're tired and you just don't feel like doing anything, go out there and run a track. That's the best way that you can simulate fatigue.
Yeah.
Another thing is have someone else lay the track where you don't know where it's at, and let them run some false lines that dead end to nothing in there, where you have to come back and restart the dog, or the dog is going to restart itself, or the dog's just going to, especially if it's a young dog, they're just going to wander around and go into search mode, and you're tired and aggravated. And guess what? It's going to help prepare you mentally for those situations. The other things, is, like I said, the false lines, have them lay another trail. Maybe like here we have a lot of hogs. You could take or any animal distraction, and take it off the trail where the dog may take that line, and then you're going to get frustrated because all of a sudden you see its body language change and you're wondering what the heck's going on, because you're tired. And do all this when you're tired and you don't feel like tracking. Maybe it's after work. Maybe you get up super early where you don't have enough sleep. But all these things will help you work through those situations. And that's something that people doesn't talk about a lot.
Yeah.
Or at all.
With the seasoned dog, it's definitely a lot easier. It's not as stressful. But when you've got a younger dog and training it and stuff, it's aggravating, and then you throw in that factor of you're wore out already. You just get mad at the dog. You said earlier, don't do that. That's very true.
Yep.
Yeah, it compounds. You're tired. You're stressed. You're not trusting your dog because it's new. All of that stuff just compounds and makes for can make for just a really unfavorable situation.
Yeah. Have either of you ever tried any of that in your training?
Not throw a lot at stuff, but up here where I'm at and stuff, do a lot of training, but nothing specifically like you're talking about what you just mentioned. I like the ideas that you threw out there.
Yeah, and I mean, for us, we've experienced that, so we kind of did it in the field. But a lot of the people who are watching are maybe newer into tracking. They don't have the years of experience that we have learning the hard way. So if we can give them advice to help them get over that learning curve quicker, that's what we're here for. Like my dad said, learn from my mistakes, not yours. Of course, it didn't always work out like that, but like my 18-year-old said, well, Dad, sometimes a man just has to learn the hard way.
That'll do
it. So just to kind of go over a few more training drills that I have, written down here is some, decision-based trails. Start two to three short lines near each other, but only one of them's correct. I shared this with Matt a couple of weeks ago. Yep. Begin the dog on the wrong one and see if the handler notices this. So this is, it's going to take someone else.
Yeah.
But I've done this working with other people, and lay basically a false line and them see their dog hit a brick wall. And, Matt's seen one of the videos and he's probably watching, he wanted bad to correct that dog, but he knew that I had done something, and he did. And even afterwards, he's like, "What do I do?" I said, "Follow your dog."
Yeah. Yeah. So Matt was aware of the dog. The old saying, trust your dog, but know your dog, and you knew something was up.
Yep. So, yeah, intentionally break a track, and where you lose scent, and you got to pick it back up, kind of like our scent gaps in our testing program. A lot of if now that you talk, we're talking on this topic, you can kind of see what led to some of these elements that we design into our tests. How do you simulate the decision making and the mental preparedness? It's through stuff like those scent gaps and no visual cue. Where let's say there is nothing there. Like I train a lot with no blood, and when we have a client come pick up a dog, and sometimes we'll use a little bit of blood in the beginning, and then we'll let it go away, and then we'll see, basically tell them, hey, you've got to read your dog and see when your dog's on it, when it's not, which has now translated into our new introduction evaluation, where we're working with a team that's newer to tracking, and we'll lay a 150, 200 yard line with about 50, 75 yards of blood, then no blood in the turn, so that, we can see how they handle that situation. So it's all building into this mental preparedness, and you want to force the handler to trust their dog and not get misled. So if you're let's say you're mentoring someone, you're coaching someone, these are things that you can do to help them be prepared mentally. And then if you know this stuff, you can set up scenarios and have a friend set this up for you so that you can prepare yourself to work past this. So just a few little tips there, because it's going to lead into long-term resilience and avoiding burnout.
Yeah.
And we've all been there, Ron, when you get to that, 150, 200 track mark, you're starting to get burnt out. You're emotionally overloaded. You'll have long strings of no recoveries. You're going to beat yourself up over it, and you can't give your dog or the hunter your best when you're like that.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
I've talked about this before too on some other podcasts. It was back with Dio, and we did a one day 24-hour period. We recovered 9 deer in a 24-hour period, did 9 tracks and recovered 9 deer. And I always say to that, the reason why we got 9 deer recovered in that 24-hour period was we was tracking dead deer. I mean, that's why.
Yep.
I mean, it will happen very often. The stars were all aligned, but I do remember that night, that whole day vividly. And halfway through the day, the forecast come on the radio. It's going to rain all over the state of Illinois. The next day. So I just told Gary, I said, let's just run the dog all night. We're not going to track in the rain anyway. But I just remember that day so vividly. But that very last track, I was freaking beat. Gary was pretty run down, and Dio, we just had to drag him out of the truck. And that's just something that, it was like, thank God the last track was the shortest track of all of them, really short. But it's the fatigue on him and us. It was immeasurable. You couldn't measure it. It was just, we were so whooped, but it was so close to home. We went ahead and did it. It worked out. But the whole day, the next day, we stayed home. I had to go to work actually, but Dio stayed in his box all day and slept all day. And we needed that recovery time. But I think a lot of new trackers need to learn the word no to when they get these phone calls. If you're tired or your dog's tired, just say no. And sometimes that's hard to do. It really is.
Oh, it's very hard to do.
Yeah. And that was going to go into something I was going to ask you is, how do you reset yourself? Well, that's it. Sometimes you just need to take a day off.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's getting to be more and more trackers. When I started up here in Illinois, there wasn't that many. Of course, you know how it's been social media, and it's just blossomed and went way out. There's all kinds of trackers now and stuff. But Now you can hand off them tracks a lot easier. Back years ago, we didn't have that availability of trackers up here. And I'm sure the numbers have grown down there for you guys as well too, for new trackers and stuff. So that helps
Oh yeah.
each say no. It's easier to say no now and give those names out of reputable guys, or whatever, gals, to do the track. And you can rest it. You need that rest because you know what's going to happen eventually. I've been lucky other than being shot that time, but I've never sprained an ankle, but when you get fatigued and run down, you're going to open yourself up to injuries as well.
Oh, yeah.
You're losing your balance. You don't have your strength. You just don't have your shit together. That's what's going on.
Yeah.
Running, and you're going to fall, trip, something, poke your eye with a stick because you didn't react quick enough. So
all of it. So that's the physical harm that can come. I mean, one of the best things that can happen in a fatigue situation is you just make a mistake that doesn't end with a dead deer, right? I mean, okay. I mean that's a bummer, and we take that pretty hard as trackers. But
those tracks should humble a person when that happens. It's happened to us, but that's a humbling experience. Those experiences, nobody likes it, but those are good things to go through and experience. It happens, But if you sprain an ankle, think about this: if you're wore down, fatigued, running through the woods, and you sprain an ankle, how many days are you going to miss out of season? Because you just put yourself too hard. You knew you was tired. I shouldn't have done it, but now I've got a swollen up ankle, and I'm out for weeks now. I've just screwed myself,
Yeah. Yeah. And one of the best ways to handle that, avoiding burnout, making mental errors is working with other trackers, even if it's just picking up the phone and calling another tracker when you're in a stressful situation.
Absolutely. When I first started, I remember my mentor at the time didn't live too far from me, Dan Hilly, but I was bending his ear a lot, and it was a huge relief, and I've returned that favor to other people as well. But yeah, getting somebody's out there doing the same thing you are can have a very logical answer. It's going to help you out a lot,
Well, I can share a story similar to that, and I'm going to drop his name. It was Dave Dayton, part of our network here, who I have great respect for. He's helped me out. So, that mental fatigue, that down on yourself. I think it was our first year. It might have been our second, but I'm pretty certain it was our first year. I was tracking what I had built up in my head was supposed to be an easy track. Unbeknownst to me, cornfields are everybody's kryptonite. I didn't know that at the time. This damn deer's in a cornfield. My dog all over the freaking place. I'm tangled up. I'm cussing. I'm swearing. I'm pouting. I'm crying. I'm angry at the dog. I'm angry at the world because I'm not finding this easy track. And I get a little bit pouty about it after, 45 minutes to an hour of all to hell and gone, all the way around the cornfield, all over the place, reset twice already. Finally, I posted in our network, hey, anybody be available to come check out with a so-called easy track? And I had, my poutiness come through in the tone of my message. Boom. I'm back at the truck because we're done. I'm done. Dave calls me. Hey, what's going on? So I explained it to him. He says, okay, dude, go back out there, go to Last Blood, put her in a downstay. And, so he talked me through it. It was a wonderful, calming thing for me in my point of stress. And I'm sure my stress was freaking out my dog because she was all over the place. And we never did find the deer. I had somebody back me up. We think coyotes pushed it out of the county, but just that, to your point, having that mentor that could call, and he called me, and it was remarkable when I took his advice and tried it. It was remarkable. And I'm not being hyperbolic when I say that. It was night and day difference in the way she took that track. We went out, we sat there for 5 or so minutes. I never said a word to her, set her right on that pile of blood that was left. And all of a sudden, she just went off on a line we'd been on before. So I'm like, okay, this is good. But she took it so much more purposefully. It calmed me down. I was still bummed, but anyway, mental state. My mental state was wrong. You know, the other thing that I would say to help mental state, because this costs me probably more than one deer, but I know it cost me absolutely one, is not predetermining in your head too conclusively whether that's a dead deer or not, based on the information. Because I knew this deer was not dead. I knew it was a high shoulder shot. So we tracked, we had blood, we went a little ways, and my dog, we're through this creek, and I'm like, man, this deer ain't dead anyway. And she started making noise, and that's when I knew. And oh man, when she gets vocal, it's a live deer. Well, and I already had it in my head that deer was not dead, so we called it. I called it. 2 days later, she says, "Hey, I found my deer. It was 50 yards from where we were."
Wow.
And it makes me feel about that big. And that's one of those moments where I'm done. Hunters don't deserve me. They deserve better than what I can offer. And it was just another little meltdown moment for me, and I got through it. But mental preparedness, proactive. The deer wasn't dead. That deer was dead.
Yeah. And it's good that you shared that. Like you were saying earlier, Kenny, maybe there's a lot of younger, newer trackers out there listening to this, and I can go back to what Dan Hilly told me one time in my early years. I was telling you, I was doing all this tracking and not finding these deer. Well, back then when I started, hunters weren't educated to, waiting. They didn't know, and they still don't for the most part. A lot of them don't. But back then they would grid search before I got there. They didn't understand stuff. So I had a lot of things going against me, but I was doing all these tracks in the early years, recovering some deer, but a lot of them we weren't, and I just couldn't figure it out. And Dan, I thought it was going to ruin my dog, because I'm not finding the reward at the end. The dog's not.
Yeah.
Doing everything we can. We're not doing it. Why are we not doing this, Dan? I said, and I said, I'm going to ruin my dog. And he said on the phone to me, he said, no, you're not. He said, think about this. And it's a great analogy. He said, how many times do you drive by a guy's house and there's a dog out there in the front yard and that dog chases your car every time you go by? Well, he never catches it, but he does it every day. It's fun,
That's a great point. Yeah.
And that goes back to a comment I made today to someone who was asking about training advice, and they set their dog up on a pretty tough trail. It was 90 something degrees and 32 hours old.
Yep.
And and there was some people commenting on there, they want their dog to always have a prize at the end. And I shared, well, I don't always want them to have a prize at the end, because they're not always going to have a prize at the end. Their prize should be getting out there and getting to hunt, getting to track. That should be their prize. That's what they love. That's what they want to do. And especially, you guys know, bloodhound, it's not so much about that deer at the end. It's that trail.
Oh yeah.
My dog just flipped you off, Kenny, because she wants her treat. But you're right. My dog doesn't care about the deer. My bloodhound, it's just the weirdest thing. But yeah.
Yeah, and you talk about cur dogs. Cur dogs want that action. They're trailing because they want the action at the end.
Yeah, very dogs. That you mentioned something earlier, Kenny. I'm going to go back on a little bit. You talked about explaining to the hunter what to expect during the track. You mentioned that and that made me think of something that years ago when I first got on track. I remember reading on, maybe it was I don't know where, somewhere on Facebook or something, but a tracker had claimed that their dog could tell you that deer was dead, and there would be that sign. And when I read that, I thought, this is bull crap, but I seen it with Dio. He had a signal that he would give us, and it become a fact that around the community here. But what Dio would do, he would he would just stop and roll on his back like he just have a nice day, and he would quit, and that was our sign. It seemed like that was his way of communicating, and got to know that. All the local hunters around here knew that and said, God, I hope he don't roll on his back, But it's crazy what these dogs can do, and if we accept that and bond with them, it's just amazing, and we're the biggest obstacle a lot of the times, and if we're that obstacle to begin with, and we throw in all this stress to us and everything else, we're going to really penalize the dog. Like you said earlier, statistically, it drops your odds of recovery or whatever, or that the tracks, your successful tracks, it's going to drop it tremendously. For sure.
Yeah. So I want to kind of back up on a couple of things. Well, one of them, we'll talk about that. You know, my dog, my main dog now, Dixie, she's a black mountain cur. And I've shared this time and time again. She will literally come up and jump on me and everyone that's there when she's saying, "Hey, we can't get this one."
Yeah.
And I can't remember who it was now. You know, I'm starting to get a little older. But there was someone, and it was out of state here, that was tracking, maybe it was in the state, but anyways, away from here, that went to track a deer for someone. And the hunter said, "Yeah, I use this guy, you know, and his dog would jump up on you." And the tracker says, "Yeah, I know Kenny Mullins and Dixie too." But you know, now one of my tackles, he'll just come over, he'll sit down and he'll look up at you, and he won't move. You know, and that's his way of telling us, "Hey, this isn't happening." You know, and once you learn what your dog's tell is, and you can explain that up front, you're mentally preparing the hunter for what you know is about to come.
Because a lot, you know, as well as I do, some hunters don't have that understanding. They think that dog's going to find that deer no matter what, you know. And
Right.
we're going to turn this dog loose. So there's so many variables out there, you know, the scent itself, the conditions, what it's done to the scent, you know, and stuff. But you got to explain the possibilities to the hunters, you know. It may not be as simple as what you think it is. And how many times have you been on those tracks? I know we've all done it. We've all heard this. You know, I'm going to take this track. It's slam dunk, and it's not. It's the one you don't find. The one that don't sound like you're going to find it, you find it. You know.
Oh yeah. I went on one.
And go ahead, Kenny.
I went on one. I got a call. It was either last year or the year before. I can't remember. Anyways, the guy calls me, and it ended up being a game warden. His girlfriend had shot a deer, and he said, "Look, man, you know, I've called you before, and you've referred other trackers to me, and you know, I know how this is going to go. The deer dropped in his tracks. It kicked around a little bit. You know, she didn't get another shot off. And I know we're probably not going to recover it, but you know, I really just want to give her a peace of mind." And it was literally 5 minutes from my house. I was like, yeah, well, you know, I'll come out, man. Not a problem. I said, you don't know unless you go.
Yeah.
That deer went 130 yards.
No kidding.
Dead on arrival, 130 yards away.
So you was assuming a back whack the whole time, probably.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Where was the hit, Kenny?
It was just below the spine. Yeah, so it did take out both lungs, but it shocked the spine.
But it still shocked the spine, yeah.
Yep. And a lot of people would have screened that out and not went, you know, and luckily he even was convinced himself that deer was shot above the spine. We weren't going to get it.
Yeah,
and,
but don't we all as handlers take more pride? You know, not that that's a bad thing. You had no idea what that track was, but don't we love the tracks that are really complicated and difficult over one that's easier to find because your dog did what it's supposed to do. Nobody thought you was going to find that deer. Those are way more rewarding. And sometimes, like I said, you don't find the deer. You can prove to the hunter, you know, it's still alive. But man, some of those tracks, what those dogs can do is just amazing. Oh, it just
some of my proudest moments are not finds with the dog work, just working through nothing but you know, a sparsely, you know, like a rye field with 3-inch tall, very sparse, that just been spread with cow manure. So it's got this massive ammonia smell. And she worked through that very slowly, but god dang it, she worked through it. And then it was a laser on the rest of the line to a live deer. Another proud moment is we walked right over top of a really nice buck that somebody shot 3 or 4 weeks before they needed me. And she never batted an eye at that deer and just kept going, you know. Those are awful proud moments. Even though it didn't end with a tailgate, it was the real deal, man.
Yeah, I mean, so I've shared this a lot. I enjoy working young dogs more than I do a well-seasoned dog that's, you know, like a machine. And it's for that reason. It's the challenge. It's the you know, not knowing. I mean, don't get me wrong. I want to have one in the box that I can pull out. And,
it's nice to have that turnkey model. Just put the key in and let it go. You know, start it up and let it go. It's nice to have those.
Yeah, but working the young dogs is so much more rewarding to me,
Yeah.
and seeing them work through those challenges. But talking about having being able to call someone for support, I'm gonna share a story. Again, I can't remember if it was last year, the year before, but it was like 1:30 in the morning, and Scott Lopez calls me.
Yep.
Or we talked a little bit before that. I forget what it was about, but anyways, I just finished up with a track, and I knew he was on a track, and I get a call, and I can hear like a little bit of panic in his voice, and he's like, "Dude, I just my one dog has a deer bait up, and my other dog's showing a question mark." I was like, "Oh man," I said, "You gonna go to the question mark?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, yeah." He said, "My dog's more important than the deer," and kind of walk through that, and I can feel him start calming down a little bit as he's heading there, and he's like, he gets up there, and his dog fell in a vertical pipe,
What?
an open hole vertical pipe that I believe he said it went like 15, 20 feet down.
Oh my gosh.
And the dog was okay, but here he has a dog that's bait up at the deer. He's got a dog down this vertical pipe, and he literally climbed in there, like put the dog on his legs and shimmied back out, and then went to get the deer. But he was seasoned enough that and maybe he didn't realize at the time, but he picked up the phone, and it was able to calm him down enough to make the right decision. And that may not even have been the reason why, but that's how it worked out.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And there's no textbook out there, expect the unexpected like that. Who would ever thought, a dog falls down a pipe like that,
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. But something that a lot of people doesn't think about that leads to fatigue and, energy loss. And, what happens when we're busy and we're running tracks nonstop all day? We eat the worst foods we can.
Oh yeah.
We pull into McDonald's and Wendy's or wherever, with gas station, and living off of energy drinks, and it's horrible.
Caffeine, candy, or Casey's Pizza for us up here in Illinois. There's Casey's gas stations in every little town up here, and that's it starts out at season. Oh, it's kind of good, but by the time end of season comes around, you just want to gag yourself. You're eating so much of it, But you're right. You're feeding yourself. We try to feed our dogs well, but we're not feeding ourselves well at the time. We're getting that convenient fast food that's not good for our bodies, and there again, that's going to affect you mentally as well as physically.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something to bring up because we all do it. Mike Alguire, he gives his bloodhounds cheeseburgers and biscuits and gravy.
Biscuit shake. Yeah.
I give Brew chicken nuggets on the trail sometimes. We split a 10-piece. Kenny, I've just got to say this. We're not going to necessarily get into comments yet, but this one I have to. Hey, greetings from Manchester, England. Hi, Virgil. Thanks for tuning in, man. Ron, you probably didn't know this. We're kind of a big deal. We are internationally known here at the ABTA Tuesday Night Lives.
I did that post, yeah.
Heck internationally known to rock the microphone.
Well, you got it, brother. That's. I wonder if anybody gets that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, but all of that feeds back into nourishment. I mean, who was it up here? Was it Chuck? Yeah, I think it's Chuck Darby. He said, he likes to make sure he has water and stay hydrated. You're not hydrated, you're not going to make good decisions.
Oh yeah.
Or you're at risk of making poor decisions. Let me put it that way.
Yeah. Well, Perry Lawrence's comment there, I was going to bring that up, but he commented on it there.
I saw it.
He's been hospitalized several times due to heat exhaustion because he's pushing himself so hard that the mental fatigue and mental exhaustion led to physical fatigue and exhaustion. because he was pushing himself so hard to find a deer.
There's a balance there, and it's hard to find that balance sometimes, especially in your thinking. If you think the deer's dead, you know what I mean? It's really hard
Oh yeah.
balance, you know.
Well, yeah. If you think that deer is dead, I mean, I had one last year that that deer I still believe to this minute is laying in that swamp somewhere dead, and I spent 4 hours, not necessarily tracking all that 4 hours, but adding location. Came out, called in backup. They found Moose found another spot of blood, and I'm like, okay, cool. But Moose, was trudging through that. He's a tackle, trudging through that, black muck swamp that, Ryan, you probably have them too. You step in them and you almost swallows you. Moose had all he could take, so I put my big bloodhound back on it, and it's just that deer is dead, and we couldn't freaking find it.
Yep.
And I just wasn't going to give up, but at some point, there's only so much you can do. Dave called me on that one too, and helped me with some things. So it's great having those mentors, man.
Yeah, like Kenny said, if you can find a mentor or somebody at your side that's been through the battle too, that's a big help, huge help.
And for years, like you were talking about not being many trackers years ago, I remember years ago, it was me and Randy Vick. That was it for several hours. I mean, it was him and I, and I mean, we spent a lot of time on the phone, but also we would track a lot together because of that reason. So you got to have someone, and it doesn't have to be necessarily even a mentor. It could be just a new tracker, just someone to lean on, and I can't tell you how many times that I have called Ralph, or Ralph's called me at 2 a.m, or Mike Alguire's called me at 3 a.m, driving home, trying to stay awake. And I'm already in bed. And you know what? I get up and I answer the phone to help keep them awake on their ride home.
Yeah, I think holding in stuff, because like when I was in the fire department and they had a horrific scene that we come up on or something, they would have therapists come in and you could talk to them, and they explain it makes sense. You don't hold that stuff in, and it's good to talk to somebody to get it out. You're helping yourself by not holding it in, bottling it up, because you're going to build that cortisol again. I assume it, at that time it's stress. You're just stressing yourself out. And that's a compound of the problem as well.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And sometimes we just get so wrapped up, like you said, it's like the Super Bowl. And 2 years ago, a lot of I had weight loss surgery, and I wasn't a week out of surgery, and it's a major surgery. I mean, they removed 80% of my stomach. I mean, it was a week later, I was out in the woods tracking a deer, and I wasn't even healed. And John was already backed up. It was opening weekend. John was backed up. And this one was right here by the house. I mean, literally across the highway from my house. And so I get out there and I get into the woods. I get in there about 100 yards. No, we were more than that. We were 100. We got in there about 800, 900 yards. We were 100 yards, 150 yards from the buggy. Well, next thing I know, the whole world started spinning and I couldn't go anywhere. I mean, at the time, I couldn't even eat solid food. I mean, the only thing I could do was liquid, or actually, I think I was on soft food or pureed or something. But anyways, I had to lay there for an hour and a half before I could get up the strength to get the 100 yards to the buggy for them to get me out of there. So what do? I go on another track.
And there it is. That and we all have them, but that's one of the meathead versions of mental.
Yeah, but on the second one, I was smart enough.
Stubborn men.
I called Jason Dyer. I told him what happened. I said, "Hey, man, I got another track lined up. Can you meet me there?" And then he meets me there, and I tried to get out of the truck and follow him, and I was like, yeah, I can't do it. And but the reason why I didn't is that I went back to the year that Randy Vick had his heart issues, and he and we were tracking together, and I've shared this before. We were on a track. We were 3 miles in, and it was one of those, we weren't going to get the deer, but the dogs weren't giving up. I had my bloodhound and young blackmouth cur, and the dogs weren't giving up. We weren't giving up. And finally we called it. Randy said, I'm not feeling good. I look up and he's white as a ghost. Call the dogs back, and my bloodhound is literally about to fall over, shaking. And, Randy's giving him some cake icing in a little tube. He snaps back, and we get about halfway out, and I look over, and Randy he looks like a walking dead man. And I said, Randy, if we can get to that railroad track right there, I'll go get the truck and drive down here. He's like, no, I think I can make it. We'll just take a break for a minute. And he did. We made it back to the truck. And we get to the truck, and the hunter says, my buddy shot one. He needs help. He's on the next road over. Well,
yeah.
I told Randy, I said, man, you need to go home. He drives over there, and he wants to get out and go on the next track. And I'm like, Randy, you can't do this. He's like, you're right, I can't. I'm gonna sit here in the truck, and I'm gonna take a break before I go home. And then he ended up having to have a major heart surgery, but we got to be real with ourselves when we get physically and mentally fatigued. That sometimes we just need to take a break.
Oh yeah, and like I said, it's too. I'm just as guilty of it, even sometimes nowadays in the past season or whatever. But back in 2016, I was in a bad motorcycle wreck. We talked about this earlier, Matthew, and shattered my right ankle. But I was laying on the highway. It's the middle of September. Bow season here starts October 1st, and I'm laying there with a shattered ankle, and ended up getting 2 plates and 15 screws in that ankle. But I'm laying there cussing the whole time. I can't track it. That's all I was thinking about. I wasn't thinking about anything else.
Yeah.
But tracking, I'm like, I'm screwed. I won't be able to track. But somewhere in the back of my mind, I was thinking, well, maybe if they put those plates and screws in there, I'll be able to still get out and go. But there's no, it's the stupidity at that point. It's like, what am I thinking? But
we all do it, man.
Listen, I got a picture somewhere. I had to have knee surgery, and I planned it in the summer so that I would be ready to go for tracking season. And then I get a call to track an axis buck in like July or June or July, whenever it was. And I actually have a picture of me out there in crutches tracking an axis deer. I did call some friends to come help that had handled my dogs before, but I was out there, no doubt. And we did get the axis buck, but we do some stupid things sometimes.
Oh yeah. And there again, it's that lapse of judgment. Sometimes when we get tired and stuff, we don't think right, and that's going to lead to that physical problem we talked about, an injury or something, and then you're out for a while, not just a day, you're out for weeks sometimes. So
oh yeah, don't be afraid to take a break. There's plenty of tracks, and I used to be at the mindset where I didn't want more trackers because I would think that I wouldn't get more tracks. Well, I told you probably 10, 12 years ago, it was me and Randy for a long ways. It was just us.
Yeah.
And now within an hour and a half of me, there's 11 trackers. I have more tracks now than I did then. And they're all running, 100 plus tracks a year.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and some of that I'm sure is just a testament to, like Ron mentioned it, social media, the awareness of tracking, podcasts and live streams like this. People, I mean, we get 3 to 5,000 views on this, not to mention the Spotify listens and audio versions. It's out there. It is accessible. It's all over YouTube. It's all over Facebook. It's all over. It's everywhere. It's ubiquitous.
Yeah, I mean, we're averaging 8,000 to 10,000, views and listens a week.
Wow.
Yeah, so I agree. We're not going to get less. I mean, not typically because there's more. I mean, awareness breeds more.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. And that's why, you know, we need to, we really need to be doing what we're doing now and sharing our experiences and trying to help these, you know, mentor these newer trackers, you know, not only to make them better, but to give the hunters a better experience. Because, you know, a lot of times all it takes is for one person to have a bad experience with a tracker, and then they tell five buddies, and their five buddies tell five buddies. Well, you know, then it can escalate into, you know, worst case scenario legislative stuff. Oh, these people are just out there, you know, chasing deer. You know, they're using this as an excuse to dog hunt. You know, so, you know, and I know I'm going to the extreme there, but that's just how things can go.
It could happen. And, you know, that's just the bad thing in life in general. There's bad apples everywhere. There's a lot of good apples in the tracking industry, but you
No,
know,
for sure.
but there's some bad apples out there, and those that bad news spreads quicker than anything else. You know, and
Yep.
you know your reputation precedes you. You know, and what you do out there and stuff, it's going to follow you. That's the best advertisement right there. What you do and what your dog does. You know, I mean,
Yep.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest, I probably give away 300 tracks a year, at least 300 tracks a year. You know, not all of them are in my area, but people call me. I mean, shoot, I got calls for New Mexico and Colorado last year that I sent to Lindsay, and one to Lindsay. I sent some to Andrew Mullins when he was out there tracking elk. I sent him to one in New Mexico. I sent him to a couple in Colorado. You know, I refer tracks out all over the place, but I will say this: if you're not doing your part to have your dog prepared, for you to be mentally prepared, for you to make the right decisions, you're not going to get a track from me.
and
And that,
those long drives, you know, you're wasting so much road time. You know, versus I could do local tracks, 3 or 4 local tracks in the time I'm driving to do one. That's
yep,
what I always, you know, I've turned down a lot of those long tracks like that, and you know, gave it to somebody else just for that reason. It's like, why should I drive that far when I can do 3 tracks versus one?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
In fact, you may not remember this, but about 12 years ago, 11, 12 years ago, a guy that I tracked for here in Florida, he's colorblind, and he was in Illinois hunting, and he had shot a target buck, and he uses, I think he was using a recurve. And, you know, he sent me the pictures, and he's like, man, I will fly you up there. And I said, no, I know a good tracker up there. I send him your number.
Okay.
And he called you. And in fact, I think you told him, you know, I hate to go that far because I know I'm going to get a lot of calls here. And you referred someone else to him.
Yeah.
His name was Don. And I have a picture of it. That deer showed back up 3 days later with the arrow still in its high in the shoulder.
Yeah.
I need to send that to you because you may not even remember that story, but
You know, well, what's funny is I guess I'm getting older, you know, and that memory goes as you get older, you know, a little bit, but it's crazy that I'm forgetting tracks, and especially when I run hard yet somewhat, you know, during the rut, the busy time, but I can't even remember where I was at the day before sometimes. I'll look at Gary like, where did we go? You
yeah,
know, you're that ran down. That's not a good thing, really, if you can't remember where you was at yesterday. And then, you know, basically, if I always thought I could remember a deer if I saw it on my phone, because I take pictures of all the deer we recovery. You know, everybody does that, but there's been a few deer where I can't even pinpoint. You know, I got to look it up. At least there's it tells you on these iPhones where that picture was taken. Oh yeah, now I remember that one now. But
Oh, yeah.
it's crazy how, you know, we're hard on our bodies, man. I don't know.
oh yeah,
It, like you said, the junk food's not good, and just the constant running, the lack of sleep, it's not good for.
It's a
no.
it's a bad recipe, bad combination for
The
sure.
one thing I've been doing the last couple of years is if I don't get that call by 8:30 at night, I'm not going that night. You know, they can wait till the morning. You waited that long to call me. You know, at this point, we're 2.5 hours after dark. You've been out there grid searching. Well, there's a couple of things, the reasons I do this. For one, I fall asleep really easy driving at night anymore, and the glare getting to me. But the other side to it, and this is kind of helps the hunters, wait till the next morning. So here's the little pro tip. If you explain to them about what happens on a grid search, it's not so much that you're moving that deer scent around. You're creating a giant scent pool with disturbed earth, broken vegetation, human dander. You let that lay, it's going to dissipate. So you created a giant scent pool that could cost us a recovery. Where if we wait till in the morning, that scent will likely be dissipated. Well, it will be dissipated. It may be completely gone, and our odds of recovery coming up or come up.
Yeah.
While the wounded deer scent remains, although because it dissipates at a much slower rate than disturbed earth and human scent.
Right. So when you have that hunter that won't wait till the morning, there's a good way to do that, and a dead deer goes nowhere.
Sure. And that's what I was going to say. But also, I always like to throw in there, hey, why not use daylight on your side, versus the darkness? You can take some states, you can take your weapon with you, whatever. You can dispatch and shoot the deer legally during the daylight hours, So, why not do it in the daylight? Wait, and as you said, dead deer goes nowhere. That's 100%.
Get a good night's sleep, and you're going to make better decisions. Your dog's going to work better.
Yep.
So don't think you have to take that call because they're just in a hurry. I can't tell you how many times I got to go back home tomorrow. And then when you just adamant and you're like, hey, I'm not going. You can call someone else, but I'm not going tonight. Then they're like, well, yeah, I'll move some things around. And then all of a sudden they can wait till the next day. And then you find out, I'm going to be here another week hunting.
So we all got our stories, and for sure we could talk days on end, hours and hours about stories. But, a track I had last year, a guy had called me, shot the deer in the evening, and thought I convinced him to not go in. It was his target deer, and we agreed to come. I was going to come in the morning. First thing, he was going to be the first track of the day. And he calls me the next morning, says, man, I'm sorry, I couldn't take it. I got up there at 4:00 and jumped the deer, pushed it on property. I can't get on that guy's property. He won't let me on there now. I was like, dude, I tried.
Yep.
If he would have waited 3 more hours till daylight, it's like,
geez,
Yep.
It's a hard, I get it. It's a hard thing, especially if it's your target deer and then the old buddies talk to you, it's dead, or the alcohol, the beer, it gets to you.
Oh yeah.
Get him. So
buddy's blood and beer. I think Gary says that. I call it the trifecta of trouble.
Yeah, and it gets so it had gotten so bad on social media on the blood trailing networks that we finally had to turn post approval on, and it got to where we had to pair them with a tracker before we could even share the post because the people, that's a dead deer, go find your deer. And it was costing people recoveries. And, once we went to that process, of course, some trackers think, the admin are just trying to take the tracks. Look, I don't need your tracks. I promise you. This is all about helping the hunters and helping the trackers, because the people that just the ignorant ones, because they just don't know, are giving bad advice on social media. So we had, how do we mitigate that? We turn on post approvals. Once the tracker talks to them and commits to it, then we let the post go live and say, hey, tag them. This person's taking that track. But I know I got off on a rabbit chase right there, but it just,
we can, and there's nothing wrong with that, talking about, even, and I'm sure you're going to agree with me, Kenny and Matt, it's like people sometimes will call me and say, hey, you're the expert. It's like, no, I stop them right there. I'm not the expert. I'm just experienced, I'm seeing and learning things every year, it's continually I'm educated on things and seeing things that a deer I never thought would do, and we all see that,
Oh yeah.
And said these people behind the keyboard on the keyboards are commenting, they don't realize the things we see as a tracker day in, day out, and how many times a year, and we're still flabbergasted about things that we see. That's just unbelievable.
That's
And
right.
Hunter ain't exposed. It's just.
I want to grab a comment here, but before I pull it up, let me find it again. Here it is. Because we've kind of moved past it, but when it popped up was a moment, and I'm going to go back. We talked about managing hunters' expectations and things, and there's been more than one time, because you want to manage that hunter's expectations, you want to give them hope, but you also have to be grounded in reality. That's how I feel about it, And one of the ways I do that, hey man, what do you think? We're gonna find this deer? I'll typically look at him and say, well, statistically across the nation, 60% of the time we don't find them, and then you get that blank. that really like blank stare, like, what do you mean? So I kind of prep them that way, and then who knows what's going to happen. But let me bring up Chuck Darby's. My biggest part of mental game is dealing with hunters that will not take that your deer, I think he meant to say, is not dead, or the drunk. So we'll just save for the drunks piece, but trying to convince your hunter that the deer is not dead, and some of that goes back to your pre-track briefing and how well you do that. How well you do that goes back to how well you know your dog. How much time are you putting behind your dog in the off season so you can walk through those declarations that if she comes back and jumps on us, it's over. If he rolls on his back, it's over. It's not happening. You got to know your dog and to set that up. So,
and I want to share. I want to give a shout out to someone. They may not even be listening to this, but I want to give credit where it's due. Where I learned that from was a gentleman named AJ Niet. AJ is a tracker in West Georgia, East Alabama, kind of around Eufaula area, and we were in Eufaula, Barber County, Alabama, and a friend of mine shot a deer. I didn't take a dog with me, and because we decided beforehand we were going to hunt pretty hard, and I said, look, I know a good tracker in the area. We called AJ out, and AJ, I mean, it was the best pre-track. I don't want to say, I guess just say pre-track speech and interview. It was one of the best I ever heard. And he went over every little detail. He even went over how his dog bays, what's going to happen if we get into a base. I mean, just everything that he could think of, he went over. And,
yeah.
And I took that, and I told him, I said, hey man, I'll give you credit every time that I share it, because this really helped me, and I had a lot of experience at the time. That was just something else that I learned.
So, and that's what works good with my situation. Gary, a lot of he's running the dog in the busy time. It usually starts out I'm by myself in October, but come November he's with me. But he'll run the dog, and I'll hang back with the hunter, and I'll educate. I get all the time in the world to sit there and talk to him about scent and different factors and stuff. And so I'm taking that time to educate them, and they learn a lot. They're friends, so it's helping us all, in a way. So that's a good thing to sit and talk to your hunter. And in my situation, do that because Gary's running the dog and we're standing back at the last blood or whatever. And Gary, he just don't have the patience sometimes with some people.
Yeah.
It's tough. It can be tough.
Yeah. And we do that a lot. I mean, we've gotten to where, we track in groups a lot here. Me and John, and, even a lot of us last year, David All came from Mississippi. He came over here, tracked with us, and on a couple of tracks, it was me, David, Ralph Bennett, Jason Bell, Kayla Tyre. We were all on the same tracks together, just having a good time.
Now, here's this, but how many times have you heard, I've killed 50 deer and blah, 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 and all this?
Oh, yeah. I know it's dead. Yeah, I've hunted, and Yeah, those are the tough ones.
I just stop and track 150 deer a season. How many? It's like, oh, it's crazy.
Yep.
Yeah,
But
that's what you have to. You have to just stop and just say, hey, we're going to put forth our effort, and the ones that you just can't satisfy, you're not going to satisfy them no matter what, no matter how long you stay. If you stay there, if you know in 45 minutes you're not getting that deer, and you stay there another 4 hours, the results are going to be the same.
Yeah.
So I've learned, hey, we're not going to get this deer. If you want me to call someone else in, or if you want to call someone, you're more than welcome to, but there's nothing more that I can do here.
And what does that do when you don't do that? I mean, let's go back and tie this together. So you're wasting your own mental energy, you're wasting your dog's mental and physical energy, and it's going to carry into your next track, or has a strong potential. Yep. Or you guys that are doing all of those, it's a cumulative effect. You're you're not recharging substantively on the 36-minute drive from track to track. The dog might get a snooze in, and he may be good to go, but you're not. So by knowing your dog, knowing when to call the track, and this comes with experience as a young handler, the new people. I am the epitome of this trap, comparing myself to the Ron Slifers and the Brian Albertas and all of the people that I look up to because I didn't have the patience to wait for what I knew was coming. I wanted it now, and it's just not reality. So when you do that, it just gets harder. When you're young, it's hard to call those tracks, and that comes with experience. But the more you can become, and then you're nervous about, okay, I'm not really sure, about my abilities yet. So maybe this deer is dead. So let me just keep going, But as you build experience, you've got to be able to say, okay, maybe your deer's alive, but there's nothing more I can do for you. I've used that line before. I said, look, man, I'm not sure. Everything suggests your deer's not dead. I don't think there's anything more that I can do for you here. Most people accept it,
Yeah. Yeah.
If you're handling your dog deer, it's not down, because like you said, it's going to spill over. You're going to leave that track angry and go do the next track. There, you're starting out on a bad foot, because all the wasted energy you had from the previous track, it eats.
Yeah, because the longer you stay there, the more frustrated you're getting. The best thing you can do is just pull out and say, hey, if you want a second opinion, I will help. I will call another tracker for you.
Yeah, I've done that before.
Yep. Now, if you get called to track behind someone, give the tracker the courtesy of calling them and letting them know, hey, I got a call, and hear the details, because there's multiple sides to a story.
Yeah, my buddy Brent did that to me last year. Tracked a deer, didn't think it was dead. They called him. Brent says, "Well, Matt's usually pretty good, So Brent called me. I said, "Hey, dude, look, here's what I think. I mean, I will not be offended if you want to go. Let me know. I'll go with you." Later that night, the deer was in the field with a leg shot off.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, if you haven't had a deer found behind you, you just haven't tracked long enough, because it's coming.
Oh, it's coming. Yeah. I did that lady that I told you, where I went in with a predetermined idea that the deer's not dead. She took her wire-haired griffin out there, her pheasant dog, just wandered around and yeah.
You got the double whammy.
Yeah, I know.
That
you talk about feeling like, yeah. Talk about feeling like my grandfather used to say, lower than whale shit at the bottom of the ocean. That was me that day. I remember getting that call. I was in my bow stand trying to get in a quick hunt, and it ruined me for days.
Yeah.
But I learned from it. Yeah. And that's the thing. You've got to learn from it. So then I'm like, okay, so either I'm out of tune with my dog's tells, or my dog's tells were changing. I'm telling you, I was out of tune with them. You know, her tells didn't change. I just didn't freaking know them all yet, or you know, wasn't in tune with them. It you know, it's a far cry different now. But boy, those are rough days, man, and rough moments that all play into mental fatigue and mental. And that wasn't even a mental fatigue. That was just a mental state. Okay, my mental state was this deer's not dead. We're not gonna find it anyway. So the minute I got something from my dog that confirmed what I thought confirmed what I thought, you know, I pulled the dog, and it was I kicked myself. It upsets me today.
And how long ago was this?
Year before last.
I can recall a track that we left 7 years ago, 170-inch buck. You know, the big deer, those really hurt. You know, and
Yeah.
I remember everything about that. Pouring down rain, everything else. I'm not making it, but we was close to the deer and we left it. You know, and it's like I won't forget that.
Yeah, they stick. They stick. You remember those more than you remember some recoveries.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And Larry Beckham just put a comment up, said John told us a story about finding a deer Kenny had been running with multiple dogs at the Alabama event. So I'll kind of share that when I shared it on Facebook, and I think I've shared it here. I went on a track last year. Actually went on two, but this was the second one, and they actually had 2 deer down. But the guy was very adamant that he shot this deer right behind the shoulder, and nothing was pointing to that. You know, they couldn't find the arrow. The deer ran off with the arrow. All the blood was bright red, and so I was freaking exhausted from the track before because we went almost 3 miles through the nastiest swamp, literally chest deep water. And my dogs had finally bayed it. And then the guy's like, look, I'm done. I just can't go anymore. He's like, just call your dogs. And so I was frustrated. I was mentally fatigued. I was physically fatigued before I even went on the track that Larry's talking about here. So then I get there, and the guys had been drinking, and not that they were drunk, but typically, you know, when I pull up and I see guys drinking, it's a bad experience.
Mm-hmm.
So I was already, you know, mentally fatigued, and I see the alcohol, and in my mind, because I didn't have a clear head, always automatically went to the worst. You know, I'm like, here we go again.
Yeah.
And I get out there, and the whole time they're telling me, oh, it didn't go that way. We found blood over here. And it was just, I was getting so aggravated. And finally I said, look, I don't mean to be rude. I said, but if you guys could have found this deer without me, you would have. So at this point, please just be quiet and let's follow the dog. And normally I'm not that abrasive. It happened a couple of times last year, unfortunately. But and so we're going along and still not seeing good sign, but my dogs weren't quitting. So I'm like, you know what, this guy might be right. And here we are back in about waist deep water at this point, and my dogs start going crazy. I'm like, oh boy. He's like, what's that mean? I said, your deer's alive. There's no way. I hit it right behind the shoulder. There's no way. And then sure enough, they jump it and they start running it. And they get it held, and it was a quarter mile away through thick, nasty swamp, you know, chest deep water. I'm burnt out. Just I'm done. And finally I told them, I said, look, I'm not pushing this deer anymore. I'm tired. The dogs are tired. I'm calling someone else. And luckily I recognized that I was about to make some bad decisions, and I was getting frustrated. And I called John and I said, hey man, can you bring some fresh dogs? And so he did. He said, I'm on my way. Well, he gets out there, and now I had time to sit in the truck and relax, cool off. I actually drove to the store so I could get some air conditioning. It was 90 degrees out. and went to the store. They're like, well, we got stuff to drink here. I was like, no, I need to run to the store. So I ran to the store, got something to drink, got a healthy candy bar.
Yep. The energy anyway. Yep.
In a Monster. And so I get back and John's there and we turn his dogs out and we start trailing, and the hunters were getting anxious again. And finally I said, hey guys, I said, I think my dogs are, because I rested and got my mind right and calmed down, got over the mental fatigue. I told them, I said, hey guys, how about we, now that my dogs have had time to take a break, how about y'all take me over there and show me where this other deer was shot, and let's let John work this one. And so I was able to remove those people, kind of like you were talking about with Gary. I was able to remove those people from hindering John's work. We went to the other side of the property. We started tracking, and John calls me, man, we jumped it. The dogs running. They got it baited in the pond. My dog's swimming around it. So I said, all right, guys, we got to go. Loaded the dogs up, and I went around there, and I got close, and I started heading into John. And John, by this point, because I told you how the terrain was, well, John's starting to get fatigued. And he calls me. He's like, my dog, it's going to drown my dog. My dog's swimming around. The deer's on my dog. I was like, what are you doing, man? Get in there and grab the deer. He's like, I don't have my pistol. I said, drown the thing. Do whatever you got to do to protect your dog. But we've been tracking nonstop all night long, all morning long. And so I get in there to help him out, and his son had went in there and dispatched the deer. I'll just say that. And
yep, that's all you got to say.
And we're coming out with the deer, and just so now he's mentally fatigued, physically fatigued. He wants to go over there and help me on the other one, and I had already started tracking it. And this is the crazy thing. I guess you shouldn't say crazy, but we start tracking. They were adamant that the deer crossed the road. Well, what the deer did is it came to the road, it went across, and it doubled back and went back and skirted this pond. And the dogs got hung up right there on that backtrack on the road, and finally worked it out. We find the arrow, and we're tracking along, and like I said, and even John is like, I don't think we're going right. I don't think we're going right. And because he's pretty fatigued. And all of a sudden we come up on the tree stand where we started the first track. So afterwards, once we got calmed down, we started replaying it. The guy shot the deer. It looped around. The other guy shot it. and that's shot at. That's what we were thinking in our mind. And I said, wait a minute, let's go back. Let's go back through this, because that other deer had only been shot once. And we never found the arrow from the second shot. So now, once we had time to calm down, we believe that the one of them shot it, the other one shot at it and missed it. But anyways, that was 9 hours after that deer was shot, and this man was adamant that it was behind the shoulder. It clipped both lungs and the heart. It was alive 9 hours later. But so like I said, if you don't have one found behind you, I mean, luckily I was pretty fatigued, but I did make the right decision to call someone else in.
So you was talking about pulling up and seeing the guys drinking beer, alcohol, whatever. You know what's worse than that? You pull up, beer, and then you get out on the track and you look behind you, and there's two guys carrying a cooler along with you on the track.
Yeah.
We did. Yeah. There you go. It set me in a sour mood, because I just told them off. We kept going a little bit further, and I said, guys, this ain't no party. I'm here to find a deer. I'm going home.
Yeah.
That was bullshit.
Yep.
Yeah.
I get it.
And by the way, have you drowned a deer before? Have you ever done that?
What's that?
Have you ever drowned a deer before?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty dangerous, man.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. I mean, the things we do.
I did.
Yeah, I'm a big wuss, man. I hate that kind of stuff. I had to watch a guy. I wasn't gonna do it. We found it, and it wasn't dead. It was very close, and it was before work track, and he had to get very primal with how the deer was dispatched, and I hated every minute of that, man.
I don't glorify that at all, but I just
No.
has to end. The suffering has to end,
Oh, I agree. I'm not finding fault with it. I hate it. I don't like it. And I don't want to do it. Have to, you have to. But this is just kind of how much of a wuss I am. Let's grab Megan's comment because it ties in. Talking about the mental fitness, we kind of talked about it. But Megan says my biggest mental hurdle is after a string of no finds, whether it be from lack of fatal shots, just not finding one, or property line issues. It gets mentally discouraging after so many. Last season was awful for property line for us, and that property line one is a tough one, especially if your dog's tracking along and everything about it says the deer's dead. Nope, can't go over there. You
have to teach. You have to teach your dog how to read. I taught my dogs how to read, and they know what no trespassing signs are.
That's right.
Hey, no joke. We have a video of Billy Hodgson's dog when we had it here working with it. The dog, when we got to no trespassing sign, when we were doing we were actually it was through the development stages of our test lines when we were doing the property line.
Yeah,
the dog learned that when it saw the no trespassing sign that we were going to make it sit there and wait. So then we were running it off lead, and we get up there, and the dog's at the property sign sitting there looking at it.
You freaking guy. That's funny.
Yeah, we got it on video.
I believe it. Let's grab Calvin's because we're having a lot of fun, but let's grab a serious one here. And Calvin is in the medical emergency response field. All this talk of potential injury also brings up a valid point about learning the basics of first aid and CPR. Ron, maybe you know a little something about that.
Yeah.
I believe he said I believe it's great justice to be prepared not only for yourself but for hunters or you're tracking for. Emergencies don't make plans and set times when they occur.
Yep.
So again, I say Gary blessing that day because to have on my side because he's a certified first responder where I was.
Oh yeah.
Gary was the man right there, the man of the hour. He kept his cool where the hunter was in shock and couldn't even call 911. But yeah, that comment's very true. Expect the unexpected and better be prepared for who knows what.
Yeah, yeah.
Dang, man, and that
even before that happened, I mean, I did go through CPR first aid training. I'm required with my captain's license. I have to do that.
Mm-hmm.
But after going through that, I actually have 2 tourniquets on me at all times, and hopefully, I mean, a tourniquet is the last resort, but in a scenario like where you went through, that could be a matter of life and death.
And very quickly, because it was real close to my femoral artery. You cut an artery, you know what it does to a deer. It's the same way with us. You're going to dump blood.
Yeah. So I know the answer, but there was a question that came in earlier.
Yeah, you saw that. I didn't know if we should bring it up or not. Go ahead.
What broadhead was on there? I know the answer, but I gotta get you to say it.
So it's a 2-blade mechanical, and I'm not going to mention a brand name, but it's really
Oh, great song by the Jay Giles Band, by the way. Ron, you probably know it. Rage in the Cage, man. Great song by the Jay Giles Band.
I'm just very thankful. It was bad enough to the bone. I'm just glad it wasn't a muzzy because they are bad.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, here's a comment I want to bring up. Um it's actually a pretty good one. Um Kenny Mullins writes in reference to bloodhounds, they really are great dogs. I had an awesome bloodhound. He was super smart. Nice job, Kenny. Yeah.
He
See?
was. He was so smart. He was dumb.
No. No, it says right here, they are really great dogs. I had an awesome bloodhound. He was super smart. That was May 8th, 2025. Those for keeping score at home. May 8th, 2025. Kenny Mullins comments on a public Facebook page. It was Ron's post that bloodhounds are really smart.
They are. They're too smart. That's the problem.
And they're great dogs.
When you add in all that intelligence and combine it with the stubbornness,
Mullins,
they are master manipulators.
Absolutely. Keep there. Hey, Matt.
Yeah.
Back to, was it Megan that had talking about the mental state and the fatigue?
Yeah.
The long no fines. We all go through that, even the experienced trackers, veteran trackers. And what I say to that is, and it told to me one time, and it's true, you'll have those, you go through those rough spells, but when you find that next deer after a 10 run recovery, that next one you find is going to be like a grand slam home run. You're back in it. It's not your fault. A lot of times you don't find those deer. It's just not your fault. You got to realize that.
Yeah.
But
it wears on you. But you're right, Ron. It is that mental balance. But God, it wears on you, man.
Yeah. 3 years ago, I can remember this. Randy Vick called me and he's like, "Man, I'm at 14 in a row of non-recoveries."
Yeah, how many deer had Randy tracked up to that point in his life?
Yeah, and he was down. He's like, "Man, if you get a decent track, would you mind calling me?" He said, "I'm 14 in a row," and I did. I mean, but we Randy and I, we've worked together a lot over the years, and again, with as much experience as he and I have, every year we call each other with something new that we haven't ran across before.
I believe it.
It happens. Yeah. You hear the vets like you guys talk about that all the time.
Well, you guys probably heard it before, but went through a long dry run like that, no recoveries, maybe a dozen or so. And the next one I had to do, the guy asked me, "Well, what's this going to cost me?" I said, "I'll tell you what, if it's a dead deer and we find it, I'll pay you for it."
Yeah. No kidding.
On his face, I mean, his jaw hit the ground. It's like, huh? He didn't know.
Yeah. And that's it does wear on you. And I have been, I think at one time I'd gotten up to 19 in a row.
Oh, yeah.
Non-recoveries. But I don't screen calls. I take every call that comes in that I'm able to go on. And in all honesty, when I refer calls out, I generally refer the easier tracks out. I know people don't believe that. They think I'm crazy, but I love the challenges.
Yeah.
I want the tough tracks.
Yep. Same here.
Yeah.
And it helps, because typically when I'm referring them out, it's to someone that's newer into it, or someone that could use that boost. And, I love the challenge.
Yeah. Yeah, we all love a challenge, man. That's for sure. I like finding deer. But I'm with you. I mean, no, I'm with you. And I got to tell you, your perspective, and I guess this could be tied into a mental fatigue or mental state, but the more experienced you get, the more you don't mind going on those low probabilities.
Yeah,
because you're in better tune with your dog. You're more experienced, and just what we've talked about before on when to call the track. I've had a hunter last year. I had the hunter call the track. He said, okay, I've seen enough. There's nothing here. I'm like, yeah, you're right. Thank you. you know,
Yeah.
because he's used the dog before and he could just tell the difference, and there was not a single scintilla of evidence anywhere. So
Yeah.
that's for sure.
If that's still alive, thank God those trail cameras are out there to tell them, prove
Oh
it.
yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's for sure.
Yeah, and John will tell you too. John, a lot of people doesn't realize this. John's only been tracking 3 years, but he's been training with me full time for the last 2 years. So yeah, between all the dogs we train and all the track, but John will tell you, I've given him so many tracks. I gave him his first dog. In fact, when he decided he wanted to get into it, I gave him my best dog to work with his dog during that season. So and guess what? It hasn't slowed me down any. I still refer out tracks constantly. So, and I keep bringing this up because don't think that you have to take every track and wear yourself down, beat your body up, beat your mind up, because you might not take that call and they're going to use someone else and then not call you again. Because I'll tell you, and John will tell you, I've referred out so many tracks to him and other trackers in the area, and guess what? Those people call me in the future. And what do they say? This is exactly what they say. Man, I really appreciate you getting me help, and I will call you next time.
Yeah.
And then you build that relationship with that other tracker, and they're willing to refer to you when the time comes.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah. There's just no point in being adversarial with fellow trackers in your area. There's just it just doesn't compute.
No, you're gonna wear yourself down. You're gonna get mentally fatigued. You're gonna make bad decisions, and you're gonna hurt your reputation worse than if you referred it out.
Yep, for sure. So, we're kind of coming up on a 2-hour mark here, and there's just I kind of want to go back in just a minute and recap the tangible things that people can take away. And obviously, we'll allow for some final stories or points of order or whatever. But I've just got to say this, Ron. And before we went live, we were talking about how you're kind of a big deal, and you said no, you're not. Well, you kind of are. But there are three people that I attribute my affection for bloodhounds to when I was getting into it. You and Dio, Brian Alberta and Bindi, and Mike Rippon and Franklin. I started watching Mike when soon he got Franklin as a puppy, and then then I found you and Dio, and then Brian and Bindi, and those three. You three are the primary drivers for me. Going down the bloodhound path, and it's probably going to be. Yeah, I got it right here. I don't know if you guys noticed, but I took down the ABTA banner that I had
there,
and now we have Kenny Mullins, testimonial.
That it's. I looking back at the 10 years I had with Dio, I thought I gave him. I'm sure I did. I gave him the best life I could give him. But man, looking back now in reflection, I think he gave me a hell of a life too.
Yeah.
Wasn't expecting in retrospect, looking back at everything he'd done and where we went, we was a team, and he gave me a life, man. And that's what you can look forward to. Anybody new into this tracking, relish that, enjoy the time with your animals and stuff, because tomorrow's not promised for us or the dog.
Oh, the dog, yeah.
I lost my dog the other day for 24-hour period. You talk about state being messed up in the head. Thinking now, but we found him 24 hours later. Thank God, But, good in a lot of different ways in that situation, and we'll be sharing that at our Illinois event coming up here in a week.
Yeah, and I'm gonna be there for that too. So Ron, when we stop broadcasting here, hang on, don't depart, because I want to debrief with you, because that reminded me of something that I want to talk about with you, and Kenny and I have talked about it, and another tracking friend of mine. So hang on. But before we go around and recap this and kind of outline the tangibles, tell you how many pups have you got? Have you got are they spoken for? You still accepting people on the list, Ron? Anything you want to talk about there?
So yeah, the sire, I had to deal with the owner of the sire that they get picked in the litter. So they finally did that Sunday. So now I don't want to promise people a puppy and not know what they wanted. So that dog's out of the way. They've got their dog picked.
Yeah, sure.
We've got a list going, and I'm screening people right now. But I really want to see Jules' pups go to a tracking home. Great homes are fine, pet homes are fine, but I really want the bloodline. We chose this cross. Yeah. It's a very good cross. Genetically, the dogs are great. Both dogs, the male, Jewel and Doc, and it was a good breed. And she's 7 years old. Will be 7 years old. So that's why we chose this breeding this time. She's getting fixed. So this is the last chance for Doc Jewel cross. I'm not trying to make it sound like they are the dog, you know what I'm saying, that the best dog out there, but it was carefully researched and done well. That first litter done really well on their testing and stuff, and they're just barely a year old, or a little over a year old. But we've got a selection. So if anybody's interested, contact me via messenger. And then I had another litter through another female here that you saw two of the pups there earlier, the Kenny and the Brandy.
Yeah, let me tell you, those pups I might could have a bloodhound again. Those are some good looking pups.
You're going to be cruising right through there, Kenny, on your way up to Michigan on like end of July or end of June. So
yeah, my wife would kill me.
Yeah, what do you mean? One's named after her.
Of course,
it'd be rude not to.
If one was a female, it might not be so bad. Having that male bloodhound that just could smell a female in heat from 10 miles away.
On your talking about that male bloodhound, how he was so endowed as well.
Yeah.
Oh my God. You brought that. I forgot about that. That makes me uncomfortable. But that's so funny.
That sounds painful when they're slapping up against your legs like that.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
He was a good dog. I gotta say, he was good.
So Megan Schmidt says that I need the Kenny pup, and Megan, I'm going to choose life today, and not. I already told Ron I'd love to get one of those pups, but I don't want to die, and my wife is a redhead, so
she'll get over it.
Yeah, after my funeral. Yeah, that's why I say I choose life today. But man, I'd love to get one of those crosses. I told you about it, Ron. Well, great, man. That's a good deal, and I really and you're right, man. They got a working home. I mean, so we have this very fun bloodhound banter, and pick on Kenny's hate, and Kenny talks about us. But I will tell you though, it's true in the sense that they're not an average Beverly Hillbillies lay on a I define them as a caffeine toddler. They have their moments, but they got to have a job. They got to be able to do something, and they're not for everybody. They are absolutely not for everybody.
Yeah. So my preference, as far as where the pups go, if you've got a bloodhound or had bloodhound experience, you're probably going to get a pup from me. You know what I mean? Because I don't have to. You know what you're getting.
Yeah, right.
Puppy's going to end up being 100-pound dog or bigger.
Yeah.
Yep. Quickly, that's not a problem. Just looking at a bloodhound puppy, but
yeah. What? One thing I want to touch on, and one reason why I share a lot about the bloodhounds is probably that's the breed that I see being rehomed more than any other breed out there.
There's a lot of that,
and it's because people aren't truly educated as to what the breed is.
Yeah,
that's right. That's common. And I poke, but now let's let me be fair, but I will use this against you later, Kenny. But let me be fair. And you say you kid around about the bloodhounds, but they are really good dogs for the right owner.
Yeah.
And then you try to qualify your affection earlier, but I wouldn't let you. But I will now. He was super smart, but would pretend to be stupid in an attempt to get away with stuff. And they're not dumb dogs, man. They're meatheads. They can be meatheads, but they're not dumb. They're not shepherds or Malinois or healers or something, but they are not dumb dogs.
So this is leading us to we've got to have Ron back on to talk about the breed. We're going to get into some breed segments.
Cool.
So if we didn't take too much of your time and you didn't enjoy yourself, just suck it up, because we're going to need you to come back on and talk about.
Well, two more times, Brian. That's what I want to talk to you about after this. Yeah. So we'll talk about it. So all right, man. We just hit 2 hours. So let's go back through and before we do final thoughts, and let's just talk about come back to some of the tangible things that people can take away. I always try to leave people with something that they can really take away other than the pure entertainment, which there's value in that, but what can they take away to work on? So we talk about mental fatigue. It comes from a lot of things. Experience helps with that. We talked about it in a couple of the examples that I gave in my relatively short tracking career, and I'm still learning. We're all still learning, but understanding your dog and knowing when to call a track and having that mentor to call to bring you down when you're at the peak of stress in the moment. That mentor to help you understand what your dog is doing so you can call the track when you need to call the track. You don't need to spend 4 hours on a track. Because most of the time is probably because the deer's not dead, save for some weird circumstance. Can you kind of walk through something? How do you drill for mental fatigue? By going to run a dang track when you're out of work and you don't want to fricking do it. People go, when do you go to the gym? When you don't want to. It's creating that mental discipline and that fatigue. But I will tell you, when you were saying that, I think it's, if you can set it up to where it's blind, that is going to be better, because if it's not blind, where it's at. You're going to have to fight that temptation to not to help the dog too soon, and then shrinking the benefit of the fatigue evening track or something.
But again, that's also part of it. If you can't do it blind, that is part of it to work through.
Oh, of course.
You know where it's at, so forcing yourself. So there's benefits to both sides of that.
There's benefits to both sides for sure. Doing it is better than not doing it, but there absolutely is benefits to both sides. Not turning it into a health segment, but keeping being hydrated and having water or something better to drink than the Monster Energy drink, and having high protein snacks like cashews or something like that to keep you that brain food. We talked about it before, that omega-3 fat kind of stuff for the dog. Well, same with us, rather than that double grease burger from whatever hamburger station you're going to. And sometimes that's all you can get is that 6-hour-old wrinkled up gas station hot dog. I mean, something is better than fuel. Some fuel is better than no fuel, but something like that. What other tangible things, Ron, did you get from this?
Well, I'm going to carry on with your health food bit. I got a question for you here. It's like, my wife sent me to the grocery store to get some almond milk the other day, and I'm thinking, how the hell do you milk an almond? Where mm-hmm. Then I market that and call it nut juice. That ain't gonna.
Yeah, that might fall in certain stories, but oh Lord. Say that again. You broke up.
I told you I had a joker in me.
Yeah. And I love that because I have a very juvenile sense of humor myself.
Oh yeah.
And Matt, I'm sorry.
Oh, you got a heavy breakup session going there, Ron. So
go ahead and say what'd you ask me before I said that?
oh, I'm sorry. I said so. Are there any other tangibles that you took away from this, or would ask people to think about, or maybe you haven't mentioned yet that somebody that they can really take and apply in a training or in the field?
Yeah, in the fields, okay to say no. You feel obligated a lot of times. We've talked about this in the conversations, but no is a hard word to say. It's just a 2-letter word, but it's hard to say. But it's okay to say no. You got to take care of yourself and your dog, man, and that's key. Because if you run down and you get hurt, you're out for weeks. Versus just going home, getting some sleep next day, not putting yourself out. So
yeah, and no is a complete sentence too. By the way.
to the point.
Yep.
Yep.
I'd like to say too. I know we're getting close to the end. I think we're over to it.
Yeah, we're winding down, but go ahead.
You guys, I'm really honored to be a part of this, to be asked to do. I think it's great. I mean, I never heard a podcast where you talk about something like this, and you guys are doing podcasts once a week, pretty well, and who knows about what. It's all good, it's that people are learning things. I think this is great that you guys are doing this, man. Good.
Yeah, appreciate it, man.
Yeah, thank you.
It's a lot of fun, and it's a lot of fun, and hopefully somebody can get a little bit of something out of it, even if it is just an entertainment at times. There's something to be said for that. Kenny and I talked about this several times that, talking about mental fatigue, if everything is constantly this academic stuff, it's going to wear you down. So like today, although there's some academics out of it, it was a ton of fun. And anytime we can bag on Kenny about bloodhounds, that's good. And Ron, it's just good stuff. It's good, healthy stuff, and that's what the community should be about, in my opinion. We're bouncing stuff off each other. We're learning. We're trying to, share information that somebody might be helpful. Ego defense goes down on. I mean, I have lots of other mistakes that I could share. That maybe somebody could call upon when they're finding themselves, and it was a young tracker, an early tracker, so I'm babbling.
And one thing I want to say is we've all seen it, and I know it's the elephant in the room that no one wants to talk about. Is there's a lot of, I'm going to say how it is. There's drama in the tracking community.
Absolutely.
Drama in every community, but
and there's egos, there's drama, there's like we talked about earlier, people afraid to give tracks out, and people not willing to share advice. I mean, it's been a common thing, and my personal goal through all this is to try to break some of those barriers and bring those bonds back together, and not just talk about educating and mentoring, but to bring people back together, bring the tracking community back together, and all grow together. And that's what's motivating me to do this.
That's awesome. Great.
And I'll admit I've been guilty of in the past, and probably will be again of being part of that. It's human nature, but I want to see it get better, and it is getting better, and that's my motivation. That's what I'm gonna keep working towards.
That people need to realize, though, there's two sides to the story. Sometimes, I'm not specifically talking about anything, but I know, like when I did hunters, I would prefer text over a phone call because I got it in black and white to prove, hey, you said this or that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That goes on too, you know, and it's like, I out to anybody new out there tracking it, it's best to cover your ass basically with a text phone call. They're going to lie. Like,
Yeah, especially the part where, so do you have permission on surrounding properties? Yes. Mr. Officer, this is what he told me.
Yep.
yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
So, Matt, if you don't mind, I'll share kind of what my key takeaways are.
Yeah. That's where I wanted to go. Then I want to hit the events. We forgot to hit the events.
One thing I want to share, I want to hit on is, like Ron said earlier, your energy shapes your dog's work. And whether it's that lead that you're on the end of or that wireless lead of that Garmin, either way, your dog's work is shaped off of your energy. They do feed off of it. Another thing is, be able, learn to recognize fatigue, build resilience, and train how you track. We talked about that earlier today whenever we were talking about, having a prize at the end. Well, it's okay to run trails where there is nothing at the end. In fact, that's where you build that mental stamina for you and the dog, especially if it's a blind track like Matt was talking about. And the last one is it's okay to struggle. It's okay to struggle with mentally. It's okay to struggle physically,
how you
emotionally, but it's not okay to stay there.
Right.
Yep.
So those are my takeaways.
They're in a good summary, both of you guys. I mean, that's spot on.
Yeah. Cool. And I've got, before we get into the events, Ron, I got to share this. Dave Medore, my buddy Dave in New York. Ron and Dio Facebook page was my first, was my go-to every day when I got started. He was always gracious about answering my rookie questions. I always appreciated him for that, taking his time.
Awesome.
So, yeah. And there it is, man. So, all right, well, let's just, because we forgot to do it at the top of the show, let's hit the events really quick. We have Pennsylvania coming up the end of May. The Pennsylvania event, Ron, is the same weekend as Claremont, Illinois Tracker Haven, but the ABTA Pennsylvania event, May 28, 30, anyway, that weekend. It's a full-blown testing event. Get registered. Plenty of spots open yet for seminar and testing. Please register if you want to go. We're 2 weeks away or whatever.
Yeah, and it's a pretty busy schedule, so we don't have much room for more tests. So make sure if you're planning on doing it, do it now.
Yeah. So more if you want it, yeah. And what you mean by that is there's not going to be room for last minute test at the event. If you want to test, you need to register now because it's not likely you're going to be able to get a slot at the event.
Yeah.
So then on the heels of that, a month after that, we have the Michigan event, June 28th. That is that event is in a perpetual state of evolving as well. It may right now it's slated as a one-day event. We'll see if that remains that way or not.
Yeah, it's not looking like it. We're getting more and more requests for other topics that we're running out of time. So I'm leaning towards a couple of Friday night sessions.
Yep. So again, that registration fee doesn't change, guys. So if you want to come to the Michigan event, get registered for that. That's not a testing event per se. However, there are going to be two featured tests, providing test number one is successful, that all participants are welcome to follow along on. One of them will be a debut, a new test debut for the ABTA for a fellow Michigander. So we are super duper stoked about that. And this particular
two of them, you forgot the other one. You forgot to sign up.
I'm noodling on it. I'm noodling on it. Believe me, man, my finish level. I've thought about that, but that might be either Iowa or next year. But I'm not saying Michigan's out of the question. But but there may be some opportunity for some private testing, although it's not a testing event. I'm working on properties that we can get several started in. That's just going to boil down to, how many Joe Tenney do it. Matt, you got this. I'm talking about that finish level, but and around the finish levels is the equivalent to UBT3. I say equivalent just in terms of where it stacks up in the.
Yeah, I just say I wouldn't say equivalent because one's 4 hours, one's 12 to 16, and
yeah. Equivalent in terms of the 1, 2, and 3. It's our third level, but there are some distinct differences, yes, between the organization. But nonetheless, I'm babbling again. And then after Michigan is Pennsylvania is Iowa, September 13th, 14th, that weekend. Whatever that weekend is, it's all on the website, AmericanBloodTrackers.org. Go check it out. Get registered. Please, please, please register. It helps for planning. It helps for planning. Final thoughts, Ron?
Well, you guys are talking about these events. If people's on the fence about going to these events, go is what I recommend.
Absolutely.
And deer season is going to be upon us here pretty damn quick before we realize the year's almost half over, and boom. You're going to learn a lot at these places, and just talking one-on-one with guys is the key thing, really. That's where you pick up.
Yeah. And let's go. Yeah. I'm sorry, buddy. I just got ahead of myself. I'll be in Claremont at the end of this month, pal.
Yeah. We'll shake hands finally.
Finally, man. Yeah. It just so happens that I was all registered for that before the Pennsylvania event, and it just stacked up. But I'm really looking forward to it. So,
and I want to reiterate what he was saying. You'll learn a lot from the seminars, and especially this year, we're doing a lot of hands-on stuff. But I learned more sitting around afterwards or beforehand, and just hanging out and talking.
Absolutely. You come down here to Illinois, don't be bringing those Michigan ticks down with you.
What are you talking about? I got to fend off them goddamn Illinois ticks. I don't bring them back here. Judas Priest.
They're horrible.
I know. And believe me, they ain't great in Michigan. Yeah, events, go, learn, connect. Share your story too. Somebody might learn something from you. Share your story, and just go. So, all right.
Yeah, I want to throw out a teaser for next week's. So next week we're going to have someone on that actually. So the last 2 weeks, we talked about the dog mental aspects, and this week's about the handler. Next week, we're going to have someone on who recently dealt with both, and was able to work through them. And I actually I helped them, guide them through the process to develop their mental stamina and work through some issues, and it actually led to them passing their UBT test. That honestly, the dog. It honestly had no chance had she not reached out. And so she's going to come on. She's going to share her story. And it ties right into what these last 2 weeks were, because it was her dog was dealing with it as well as her. So, you guys want to tune in next week. It's pretty good.
Yeah. And I'm glad you brought that up, Kenny, because I forgot. I kind of wanted to just tease some other things that we've got coming too that, are in the works. So we've got that one, which is going to be really good. We've got one, Ron, that I want to talk to you about afterwards to bring you back with somebody else, under the heading of GPS again, but not so much for track management. I'm just going to leave it there, lost dog prevention. specifically. And then, we've got a commitment from somebody that we just got to pin down the details out of the somebody well known and respected in the man trailing world, who trains man trailing dogs. Just got back from Europe, I think. So that person's going to come on and talk, and we'll make the connections and draw parallels, because I always think it's good to round stuff out. Fundamentally, there's a lot of the same things there. It's just the application. So I find it incredibly interesting on how we can draw parallels between Mark Manciacci. All right, but draw parallels between the man trailing world and the wounded game tracking world. And this guy also does some wounded game tracking, so that's going to be really fun. And I'm forgetting the other stuff that we got coming. We have the breed series that we want to talk about, Ron, and we've been talking about you since February about having you on to just do breed series. So we have some stuff coming up, but next week the GPS and then the man trailing one, those are near term, and it's going to be really good stuff. So I'm really stoked for it.
And I will be serious when it comes. Well, for most of the bloodhound stuff, I'll be serious. Well,
okay,
maybe
I can mute your mic. In fact, Ron, you know what? I think you and I we'll just record one. We'll just record one on a Monday night or something. Man. Okay, guys, look. I think we're up against it. Ron, once again, man, in all sincerity, really appreciate you coming on. You've always got great insight, great stories. I've listened to your podcast several times. On the way to Missouri, I listened to your one with Matt and Lindsay. That was great. Always appreciate it, man. It really means a lot to come on. Thank you.
Well, I appreciate you having fun to do this, sit down and talk and stuff. I like it. You guys are pretty entertaining. I think they do.
All right, cool. All right, guys, I think we're up against it. Ron, hang with us. Guys, thanks for listening. Thanks for the comments. Thanks for the question. I know we didn't get to a ton of them, but they're in there. We can comment on them throughout the week. But again, keep the comments coming. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. More of the good, less of the bad, guys. We will talk to you soon.